What is going on, guys? This is Trendkill, and welcome back to my Smite beginner guides. If this is the first episode you're watching in this series, you may want to go back and check part 1 and part 2. In part 1, we talk about extreme basics, and we also talk about a few beginner mistakes. In part 2, we cover the importance of communication and how to best utilize the minimap. Now in part 3, we're going to talk about itemization, or more specifically, what types of items are in the game and how and when to use them. Alright, so let's go ahead and get started. The first thing I want to make sure you guys understand is my use of the term build. I might say build several times in this video, and what I mean by that is every single god in every single match will always start with a blank slate of 10 empty item slots. 6 of those 10 slots are going to be used for general items. 2 of those are going to be for active abilities, which we'll talk about here in a little bit, and 2 more are going to be for consumables, like health potions, mana potions, and wards. So let's go ahead and talk about the 6 general items first. There are several different types of items in Smite that do several different types of things. However, they can be broken down into 3 main categories: physical items, magical items, and defense items. Now let's go ahead and take a step back. Let's make sure you guys understand that in Smite, there are 2 different types of damages. There's physical damage and there's magical damage. Each god does a specific type of damage. If you go to your main menu and you click the gods tab at the top, you can click on all of the gods individually to see what type of god they are. For instance, let's click on Fenrir here. If you go to his overview, you can see that under type, it's listed melee physical. That means he is a physical damage god. If you click on Agni, you can see that he is listed as a ranged magical, so all of his damage is going to be magical. Now there's one stipulation to that rule. All basic attacks, or otherwise known as auto attacks, do physical damage. What that means is, even though you're on a magical damage god, all of your basic attacks will still do physical damage. So no matter how much magic power you have, your basic auto attacks are going to do next to no damage because you have no physical power. Now on the other side of that coin, the physical damage gods are going to do a ton of damage with their basic attacks because they have a ton of physical power, and not only are their abilities scaling off of physical power, but so are their auto attacks. Alright, so now that we got that all out of the way, let's take a look at some of the items. We're going to go ahead and start in the physical items first, and the first thing you're going to notice as you look at the physical items is there are 5 subtypes of items. We've got physical power, attack speed, crit chance, lifesteal, and penetration. So before we talk about what each of those is, let's make sure you understand 2 things about the items in Smite. First off, each item has 3 ranks. As you're looking through the items here, you see a green number, a blue number, and a yellow number. The green number is the price for rank 1. The blue number is the price for rank 2, and the yellow number is the price for rank 3. Now looking at Warrior Tabby as an example, it's not $700 for rank 1, then $1,335 on top of that for rank 2, and $2,150 on top of that for rank 3. That item's total is $2,150, so once you put the $700 into rank 1, it's only another $635 to get to rank 2. Now the second thing I mentioned I wanted to talk about, and this might possibly be one of the most important things for a new player to understand about items, is the fact that you almost always want to prioritize finishing out an item to rank 3 before you move on to another item. Now the reasoning behind that is because at rank 3, almost every single item in the game grants you a unique passive ability, and a lot of those items are extremely underwhelming until you get to that 3rd rank. For instance, let's take a look at an item called Heartseeker. At ranks 1 and 2, it's an extremely underwhelming item. For 1,230 gold, 15 physical power, and 7 movement speed. Now, I know you may not have any idea whether that's good or bad, but just trust me, for that amount of gold, those stats would be horrible. But at rank 3, you get a unique passive ability that's going to make you stronger as you kill minions. Now let's read the passive word for word. You gain +1 physical power per stack and receive 1 stack per minion kill. All stacks are lost on death for a maximum of 50 stacks. Now what all that means is every single time you kill a minion, you're going to get 1 physical power stronger until you've killed 50 minions, and then you have a maximum of a 50 physical power bonus from those stacks. Now you take that 50 physical power and you add it to the 25 that you already get from the item, you get 75 physical power out of Heartseeker, which is 50% more than any other physical power item in the game. Now the downfall to that is, when you die, you lose those stacks, and you have to basically recharge Heartseeker. Then there's items like Witchstone, which is a little bit more forgiving than Heartseeker when it comes to not finishing out your rank 3, but at rank 1 you get 15 physical protection, 5 physical power, and 5% attack speed. At rank 2, all of those double. At rank 3, all of those triple, and you gain an aura. The aura reads, all enemies within 30 feet have their attack speed reduced by 15% and their physical power reduced by 25. So it's a debuff to all of the physical gods that are within a 30-foot radius of you. And there are several other instances where buying the 3rd rank is extremely important. I can't think of an item off the top of my head that I would not finish to rank 3 before I moved on to my next item. Alright, so now that we got those 2 things out of the way, let's take a look at the different types of physical items. Again, we've got physical power, attack speed, crit chance, lifesteal, and penetration. Now, physical power is the raw number that's going to decide how hard your auto attacks and your physical power abilities are going to hit. If we head back to the God screen, again, we're going to take a look at Fenrir, and we're going to take a look at his abilities. His number 1 is called Unchained. He leaps forward, dealing damage to all enemies when he lands. Now, at rank 1, that ability does 95 damage. At rank 5, it does 335 damage, but it always does 80% of your physical power in bonus damage. So if you have 100 physical power, at rank 5, it's going to do 335 damage plus 80 damage. If you have 200 physical power, it's obviously going to do 335 plus 160 damage. So the higher those percentages, the more important physical power is going to be for those abilities. Alright, so moving back to our list of items, the next item type on the list is attack speed items, and those items are going to increase the speed at which your god auto attacks, meaning you're going to be able to get more auto attacks in a given amount of time. Crit chance is short for critical strike chance, and those items are going to increase the chance that your auto attacks have of doing bonus critical damage. Now notice I said auto attacks. This does not increase the chance that your abilities are going to do critical strike damage because your abilities cannot critically hit. Then we've got lifesteal items, and these items are going to do what they sound like they're going to do. They're going to steal life from the amount of damage that you do. Now, much like attack speed and crit chance, this only applies to your auto attacks. Now, the lifesteal items have a percentage of lifesteal, meaning that if an item has 20% lifesteal and you do 100 damage on your auto attack, you're going to steal 20 health. And finally, we've got penetration items. Now, penetration is all about getting around your enemy's defenses. If we take a look at Voidblade, Voidblade's rank 3 passive reduces the physical protection of enemies within 40 feet by 25. So if an enemy god has 100 physical protection and you've got Voidblade and he's within 40 feet of you, he now only has 75 protection. The reduction of the enemy's physical protection is only going to inadvertently increase the amount of damage that you're going to do. Now, while attack speed, crit chance, lifesteal, and penetration are all important, because physical gods' abilities scale on physical power is by far your most important stat. If you build too many items that don't have enough physical power on them, you're simply going to be out DPS'd by your enemy. For instance, let's say we built Warrior Tabby first, which is great. That's always a good choice. We built Fatalis second because we wanted some attack speed. We built Soul Eater third because we wanted some lifesteal. And we built Brawler's Beatstick fourth because we wanted some critical strike chance. That sounds like a well-rounded build, right? Well, when you start looking at the stats, you'll realize quickly why it's not. Fatalis gives you no physical power, Brawler's Beatstick gives you no physical power, and Soul Eater only gives you physical power from its aura, and that's only 10. So really, the only thing that you're gaining physical power from is your boots, and they only give you 30. So out of a total of 4 items, $9,000 spent, you've only got 40 extra physical power than what your base stats are going to give you. Now let's take a look at a more well-rounded build. We're going to start off again with Warrior Tabby. We're going to trade our Fatalis for Executioner, which is still an attack speed item. We're going to trade our Soul Eater for Devourer's Gloves, which is still a lifesteal item. And we're going to trade our Brawler's Beatstick for Deathbringer, which still has crit chance on it. Now, the addition of those 3 items is going to grant us 30 physical power, another 30 physical power, plus a possible 20 physical power in stacks, and another 50 physical power. Now, you can see that by trading out those initial 3 items for 3 better quality items, we've gained 110 with a possibility of 130 more physical power, and it only costs us 1,000 more gold. That is the importance of choosing items properly and making sure that your items have enough physical power. Now, magical items and magical gods are no no different. Magical power is still the most important stat to look at when you're considering which items to buy. If we look at the list here, we've got magical power, mana, MP5, lifesteal, and penetration. Now, lifesteal and penetration work very similarly to physical lifesteal and penetration. Your magical lifesteal is going to steal life from magical damage, and your magical penetration is going to allow your attacks to penetrate through the enemy's magical protections. Now, under mana, you're only going to find items that are going to add to your base mana pool, and under MP5, which stands for mana per 5 seconds, you're going to find items that are going to help you regenerate your mana. Now, MP5 is applied every second, meaning that just because it's called mana per 5 seconds doesn't mean that the mana you're gaining from that item is applied every 5 seconds. So basically what you can do is you can take the amount of MP5 that you have, divide that number by 5, and that's the amount of mana that you're going to get every second. Now, the last thing I want to talk about while we're discussing magical items is lifesteal. Now, obviously, physical lifesteal, as I said before, is only applied to auto attacks. However, I also told you that mages' auto attacks are still physical. So obviously, magical lifesteal would not be applied to the physical damage from your auto attacks. Magical lifesteal is instead applied to your magical abilities. However, all of the magical abilities that have the capability of hitting multiple targets has the actual number of lifesteal reduced to 1/3. Now, the problem with magical lifesteal is just about every magical ability in the game has the capability of hitting multiple targets. I can only think of 4 gods that have single target magical damage abilities. Those gods are Freya, Hel, Sobek, and Ares. Now, unfortunately, because magical lifesteal does really help you out so little, it's kind of useless and can basically be ignored when you're building out a magical god. And last but not least, magical penetration, which works exactly like physical penetration did in the fact that your magical abilities are going to ignore or reduce your enemy's magical protections by a given amount. Now, I know I'm getting long-winded and this video is lasting longer than the others, but there's a ton of stuff to talk about, so let's quickly move on to defense items. There's not much to really discuss in this type of item that we haven't already mentioned in the previous items. Physical defense is going to protect you from physical attacks, magical defense is going to protect you from magical attacks, health is going to give you extra health, just like mana gave you extra mana, HP5 is going to give you health per 5 seconds, just like MP5 gave you mana per 5 seconds, and then you've got aura items. Now, we've already mentioned aura items when we talked about Soul Eater and Void Blade, so there's not much else to discuss there either, but just understand that each aura item, when you get to that 3rd rank, is going to give you an aura that either buffs your team or debuffs the enemy team within a certain radius. Now, in regards to building tankier gods that are going to have a lot of defensive items, now that you know that physical gods are going to prioritize physical power and magical gods are going to prioritize magical power, your first initial thought might be to just build physical defense and magical defense and call it a day and say, haha, they'll never be able to do enough damage to kill me. However, remember, when you build physical defense items, the enemy's going to build physical penetration items. Same for magical. If you build magical defenses, they're going to build magical penetration. So the key is to not forget to build health items. The more health you have in your health pool, the longer you're going to be able to stay in a team fight and help tank for your team. The longer you're in a team fight, the more crowd control you're going to provide, the more damage you're going to absorb, and the better chance your team has of winning that fight. Now, the last 2 types of items are movement speed items and cooldown reduction items, and you can find those on the list under the other items section under movement and cooldown percentage. Now, movement speed is extremely important. You definitely want to make sure you have a movement speed item. If you click on the movement section, you're going to notice several different pairs of boots. There's one major stipulation to those boots. None of them will stack their movement speed with another pair of boots, meaning that you're only going to build 1 pair of boots per build. Now, the boots that you buy are going to be decided by the god you're playing or by the role that you've been assigned by your team. If you're playing an assassin or a carry type god, you're definitely going to want to buy warrior tabby. If you're playing a tank or a defensive type god, you're definitely going to want to buy reinforced boots. If you're playing a mage, obviously you're going to want to buy boots of the magi. And finally, there's boots of celerity, which don't give you any physical magical power or defenses, but they make you faster than all the other pairs of boots, and they give you a little bit of cooldown reduction. You're usually going to see boots of celerity on tanks or support type gods. Now, the reason boots are so important is because they're going to give you a solid foundation for any build. For instance, let's take a look at reinforced boots. Reinforced boots are important for any tank type class because they're going to give you a little bit of physical protection, a little bit of magical protection, a little bit of HP 5, you're going to get the movement speed out of them, plus a bonus movement movement speed when you're out of combat, and you're going to have a 30% reduction to all crowd control durations. Boots of the Magi are going to give you magical power, mana, movement speed, and magical penetration, and Warrior Tabby is going to give you physical power, attack speed, critical strike chance, movement speed, and physical penetration. So again, boots are going to give you a little bit of everything that you need, all the while also giving you the movement speed that you need to catch up to or keep up with the enemy gods. In your 6-item build out, I would never recommend getting your boots any later than your 2nd item. You definitely want to get boots 1st or 2nd. Otherwise, you're going to find yourself way too slow to be able to accomplish much. Now, cooldown percentage or cooldown reduction items have a flat percentage that they cut off of your cooldown times. So for instance, let's take a look at Breastplate of Valor. That's going to give you mana, physical protection, and is going to reduce your cooldowns by 25%. So if we go back and take a look at Agni's abilities, we can see that his Noxious Fumes has a 12-second cooldown. With Breastplate of Valor, that would be reduced to a 9-second cooldown. You're going to find that cooldown reduction is far more important on utility-type gods than it is on damage-type gods. Let's take a look at Ymir. He's got a wall and a freeze that he can use to kind of control the enemy. The more often he can wall and the more often that he can freeze, the harder it's going to be for the enemy to get away, and the easier it's going to be for his laning partner or his team to secure those kills. Alright, so now that we've gone over all of the general items, let's make sure we understand what makes a good build. For physical builds, you want to make sure you've got a little mix of everything. You need physical power, attack speed, crit chance, lifesteal, and penetration. Now, lifesteal is more important on physical ranged gods, but it's also really good on physical melee gods. Whatever you do as you're creating your build, make sure you do not neglect your physical power. As far as magical builds are concerned, you're going to want to make sure you've got a decent mix of magical power, mana, and penetration. MP5 is also nice, but not necessary, and lifesteal at this point in the beta is pretty useless. For a defensive build, you're going to want to make sure you've got a decent mix of physical defense, magical defense, and health, but that is all situational depending on the makeup of the enemy team. If they've got 4 physical gods and only 1 magical god, you're going to want to focus more on physical defense than you do magical, and vice versa if they have 4 magical gods and 1 physical. No matter what, health is important either way. As far as movement speed and cooldown reduction are concerned, movement speed is an important part of every build, and the boots for your build should be purchased no later than your 2nd item. And lastly, cooldown reduction is again completely situational. I usually only end up buying cooldown reduction when I buy another item that has something else that I want, and cooldown reduction just happens to be on it. Alright, so we're almost finished. Bear with me. I know this video is about twice as long as my other 2 videos, but we only have 2 more types of items to talk about. The first of which are called Consumables. Now, the main 3 consumables that you're going to be worrying about are health potions, mana potions, and wards. The other 4 items, the potions of magical and physical might, and the elixirs of power and defense, should only be purchased for when you've been in a game that's gone long enough for you to have a full build and still have leftover money. Then you can start buying the potions and the elixirs to make yourself more powerful. The reason you don't want to waste your money on these early is because they only provide a small bonus, it's a temporary bonus, and you lose that bonus when you die. So I'd hate for you to spend 400 gold on a potion of physical might and then die right away and have thrown that money away. Now, all of these consumables can be stacked up to 5, except for wards can only be stacked up to 3. Now, in part 2 of this series, we already talked about the importance of wards, but health and mana potions are also an important part of every build. Now, the one thing that you want to understand about health and mana potions is that they do not heal instantly like they do in some other games. Your healing potions are going to restore 250 health, but that health comes over 25 seconds. Your mana potions recover 150 mana over the same amount of time. So usually I'll use healing and mana potions to kind of round out my build. I'll buy what I need to buy, and then with the money that I have left over, I'll buy some healing and mana potions. Alright, so finally we're coming to the end of the video. We need to talk lastly about active abilities. Now, there are several different types of active abilities, and just like consumables, you can have 2 at any given time. So looking through the list here, you can see that we've got a ton of different types of abilities. We've got Hand of the Gods, which if you've played League of Legends can be compared to Smite, which deals damage to nearby enemy minions. That's really good at clearing buff camps in the jungle. You've got speed buffs, you've got mana heal, damage buffs, teleportations, crowd control removal, invulnerability, all different types of actives. Now, much like the rest of your build, you're going to want to make sure you buy your actives around the enemy team. If the team has a lot of crowd control, you might want to buy yourself purification beads to kind of negate some of that. If they've got a lot of burst damage, you may want to buy Aegis Amulet or Aegis Amulet, however you want to pronounce that. If the enemy team does not have a lot of ways to escape, if they don't have a lot of dashes or jumps, you might think about buying Creeping Curse, which is a speed debuff to all enemies within a certain radius around you. If they can't dash or jump away and now they're slowed, you're going to be able to stay on top of them until they're dead. Now, unlike any other items in the game, your active abilities can never be sold, so make sure that you definitely want an active before you buy it. Now, if you're nervous about knowing which actives to buy and which not to buy, it's always a safe bet to buy your Aegis Amulet or Purification Beads and Sprint. Those three are going to give you the most survivability out of all of the actives. So really, guys, that's about it. We covered so much stuff in this video. Hopefully you didn't lose interest about halfway through and just drool your way through the rest of the video. The last thing I want to mention is that if you make a mistake and buy the wrong thing, you have 10 seconds to sell it back for full price. After that 10 seconds, you will only get 2/3 of what you paid for that item. So make sure you don't go buying a bunch of items and then realize halfway through the game that those aren't the items that you want and go back and sell them, otherwise you're throwing tons of money away. Again, the only items that you cannot sell back are active abilities. So anyway, guys, I'm gonna go ahead and get out of here. Finally, my throat is killing me and it's about time. But if you guys have any questions, comments, anything like that, let me know that stuff in the comment section below. I'll do my best to answer it. And until part 4, guys, we'll see you later. Thanks, guys. Bye.